Welcome to Learning with Lisa, Student Success Beyond Expectations podcast with Lisa Navarra, award-winning educator, consultant, behavior specialist, author, and parent.
Welcome to Student Success Beyond Expectations podcast. Today we have Amanda Owens, and she says the mom factor is so real. Amanda, welcome.
Hi, it's very nice to be here today, Miss Lisa.
She's going to be talking to you about that mom factor and how it can influence being able to instruct your child during homeschool. So are you a parent who's interested, thinking about, or even homeschooling your child now? If so, this podcast is for you. So Amanda, what do you mean by that?
Oh man. So mom factor, as I like to define it, is because you are mom and you wear that hat and that role, your child sees you as mom, and therefore it can make it hard when you try to put on the teacher hat to be seen as the teacher role by your own children.
What do you do when that happens? Like, what does it look like? Can you share a story with us, even if it's a war story? We love war stories.
Totally can. So I'm a speech language pathologist by trade. So you would think like, I can't have a late talker, right? No. I have a little guy who is late in the talking department for a couple different reasons. And I realized, okay, I can't just do my normal mom thing. I got to get in here, dig into the nitty gritty, put on my SLP hat, my teacher hat with a speech therapy tassel or something. And I got to teach him what I know to help him talk more, better. And I started bringing out that little teacher voice, and he looked at me. He started laughing with his little like toddler chuckle, like, no. And that's what he said. He just looked at me, snort laughed, and said, no, and walked right away. He just laughing the whole way, just gone. And I'm like, that was it. That was mom factor. I've been encouraging moms with mom factor my whole career. And here I am looking at mom factor, and it's adorable. But
now you're the victim of it.
What do I do? What do I do?
What do you do?
Oh, I think honestly,
yeah,
it takes some time to get a little meta, step back from the situation and go, okay, so I'm mom, but I'm mom who's teaching. I can't necessarily completely switch, because when you do one of those like about face Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, even though it's not like good cop, bad cop, it's just like mom you versus teacher you miss out on something. You're always mom. And when you put on a facade of teacher mom, your kid's going to see that and they go, that's not who you are. And then boom, mom factor, it just can explode in your face. But thinking about, who are you as mom when you're teaching? Who are you as mom when you are sharing the world to your child? I mean, we teach without realizing it. So how do we do that while being intentional while teaching? I think that would be the biggest thing, because the individual steps could look different but for each child. The individual steps could look different for each parent, because it's going to be your own flavor. Like my teacher voice is different than other teacher voices. My mom voice is different than other mom voices. We each have our own stride. And so it's just about finding in that role that facet of it, I think.
Right. So that way your own child says, maybe I can learn something that I want to,
Maybe.
even though it's mom.
Yeah. Maybe this is just another thing that mom does. Maybe this is just another thing that falls under the mom hat. I mean, we're always teaching about our life. So maybe this is just more of that.
And what did it look like when, you're still home teaching, correct?
Yeah. We homeschool our 4 children. We have 2 that are actually in school, but we have one that's in therapy with mom. Obviously, I do it myself. And my husband is doing a lot as well, because it's just so important when parents get involved. But yeah, we home teach, and it's definitely a different hat.
And so walk us through your day and your curriculum. Like, what does it look like when you're teaching your own child?
Um, well, it really just depends on the child. I can draw from a lot of different experiences. I was homeschooled as well. My experience was very different from my own children. My children's experience was very different from their dad's, who was homeschooled in a combination by his sister and by his mom. And I've known so many people who are, I'm sure you're familiar with a cooperative, a homeschool cooperative, where you go and you swap lessons. And so, somebody else takes the mom factor for a moment and works with all the kids, and then, you swap based on your interests. So, like, I was just talking to a mom earlier today who physics. She has a degree in physics, and so guess what she taught? you
Yeah.
know, when she was leading a co-op, she's like, "Yeah, I did math and sciences. The other moms did the other stuff." So I think it's interesting, just finding your niche, and it's different for every family. For us, we wake up in the morning and my husband has a list that's already started out, and my baby, who I taught to read, miracle of miracles, right? We are always amazed when our children learn and grow.
True.
My big guy, he's reading beautifully, and so he goes down his list and he goes, "Oh, I'm supposed to do this next, okay," and then he goes and he does the thing, and we have to keep him in line from time to time, like, "Hey buddy, what you supposed to be doing right now?" And he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I did kind of bring Legos to the kitchen table."
Right.
Yeah. And then he'll go back to his work. But honestly, he's very, very independent. And then we spend time studying larger things like history together, science together, and that happens more during the evenings, or when we have days off, et cetera. We do year-round schooling. Everybody's a little bit different, but yeah, we go through the curriculums just step by step, and do a lot of reading with our children so that we get a lot of generalization of their skills. It's a
Mhm.
lot of fun. Yeah.
And being that you homeschool with your husband, or maybe not exactly at
Mhm.
the same time, but with different
Yeah.
subjects, how important is it for the two of you to communicate how it's going with your child? Because explain to the listeners
Yeah.
how your schedule and partnership works with your husband, and then the communication that follows with that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for my husband and I's dynamic, and just for our schedules, but mostly because of our dynamic, we have learned that we are really great about having a joint project, but dividing it up so that we're not touching each other's stuff.
Mhm.
We're both individually highly focused. I'm going to say perfectionistic people. And so I like to go off and do my thing and really, really pursue it in my way. And he likes to go off and do his thing. So what we do is we kind of divide the responsibilities. He does the math and the handwriting. And different kind of nucleus subjects like that. And then I do a lot of the reading and then experiential stuff. So the reading and the science and the culture and those kinds of things. That's more of what we do. And we really honestly kind of like divide it up and kind of split it, which is a bummer, because some of the beauty of homeschooling is being able to um, show children how everything connects,
Right.
because you can combine a lot of the subjects in beautiful
Yes.
ways. And that's something that we have communicated about and talked about doing more and more in the future as our children all get older. But for right now, since we have two itty bitties at home, I mean, we got the crazy toddlers that are, markering on the walls still. Not often, but last night I most definitely got blue crayon off the floor.
Ah,
Um,
congratulations for that.
Thank you. I was
Magic
like, this is
eraser
why
has
we
been
have
given.
tile.
That's, oh
Yes.
yes. I love magic
Oh yeah.
eraser. My office,
I
when kids are like,
know.
let me see what this crayon does, and I'm like, oh, well, do you see?
Magic
Okay.
eraser. Isn't it so good?
So
Oh,
good.
bless the person who came up with that. But we've talked about how once they're a little bit older, it'll be better to do things as a family. But right now, our children do really well with a little bit of one-on-one, a little
Yep.
bit of one-on-two, and then splitting subjects up. But a lot of families will do whole family unit studies. And then there's unschooling, which is very non-structured, no curriculum, etc. We would call ourselves eclectic homeschoolers because we take from curriculum, but then we modify a lot. Our son would have been so bored if we would have kept him to the normal path and routine of things. He is zooming ahead, especially in math, but also starting to in reading as well. And so it just lets him move at his own pace, and our daughter will as well. So yeah.
How do you know where to modify? How do you know where to get your materials? How does that
Oh
work?
yeah. Oh yeah, that's a big one because there's so much out there, right, Miss Lisa? There's so many great resources. Like you've
There
got
are.
wonderful resources. You
Thank
you
you.
could make what you have into a beautiful resource for like the socio-emotional and executive functioning. How to like that's life skills right
Music to
there.
my
Like that's the
ears,
good
Amanda.
stuff. Yes, like that's the stuff you really want to your kids to know. Like if they know that Antarctica is on one pole, instead of the other, that's important-ish. But if they have executive functioning, if they have those life skills, they're going to be able to learn everything else they need to learn. So
Right,
yeah,
right, right.
homeschooling, one of the beauties is you can pick from anything. There are people who do logic and Latin in kindergarten. They
Wow.
do that. That's not quite us. We have a math curriculum that we bought, and it comes with I love this. The part of the reason why we picked it is because we knew we have 4 children. We're going to have 4 completely different human beings. So we wanted to buy a curriculum at least that got them up to high school that has flexibility within it. And the woman who designed that, she made it so that there's, I think, 5 different versions of her curriculum, and each one follows a slightly different path and style of learning.
Mhm.
And so we would be teaching the same concepts mostly the same way, but in a slightly different path, depending on what our children need. So that's fantastic. But whenever our children hit a wall, that's when we worked to figure out a way around it,
Mhm.
honestly. So
And talk to us about how you make sure that they're integrated socially. What are they involved
yeah.
in the community? Things like
Oh,
that.
that's a good one. Yep. You must have practiced beforehand because you're asking all the good questions. All the
Maybe
good
I'm just
questions. Yeah.
that good.
Yeah, I think you are that good. You just are that good. You're perceptive and it's fantastic. Um, so this is a question homeschoolers get a lot. And one of my first things is I know I'm socially awkward, but I was before I was homeschooled because I was homeschooled 8th grade on up. My
Oh, you're so
husband
cute.
is my husband is the most couth, the most socially savvy. Like he's the guy. The guy when you walk in a room and everybody's like, "Oh, that's the guy. That's my husband." Even though he's quiet, he's definitely the pillar of usually his social groups that he's in. But he was homeschooled the whole way. Um, Social skills are in integration are a huge question that people ask homeschoolers, sometimes accusatorily and sometimes because people are really curious, like, how do you do that? And I think it's, again, different for every family. That's one of the beauties of homeschooling, is the fact that you can accommodate and you can individualize. It's like a walking, talking, individualized education plan. It's an IEP. Because it can be different for each child, for each family, et cetera. For us, what we like to do, we like to be highly involved in our church. During the summers, we get together with local homeschoolers. We go to other churches' parties just because
That's
we love
great.
meeting new people, me and my
Mhm.
kids. My kids do share some of my social anxiety, but we talk through it. We have time to process through it because they're not going from event to event to event. We have time to kind of defrag and go, wow, that was so much fun when we got to ride horses with our friends. Wasn't it amazing? Yeah, Dixie let you ride with her. That was so sweet. Why do you think she did that? And we can really talk about it. So I love that. Love that. Oh, we're going to go visit a new church event today. Who do you think we could meet? What will we say to them? Oh, we can totally do that. And it's a lot of fun that way. But I have friends who rent a roller skating rink with their homeschool co-op once a month, and every month they go for an entire day, bring a picnic lunch and snacks and stuff, and just go roller skating.
Fun.
Crazy, right?
Yes.
And then there's ones that do academic drill teams. My mom ran a volleyball team, and they ended up going nationals. They were undefeated in our Christian school athletic conference the first year they were in operation.
Wow.
And because my mom's a really good teacher, not
Yeah,
always the
there you
best
go. It's
player,
awesome.
but a really good teacher. Yeah. And and it's still going strong. It's still going strong. And they go to homeschool nationals and place every year. Like it's just so cool. The different opportunities. My husband, he had to pick between little league, eventually once he was getting up there. And I can't remember. It's like major minors or minor majors, whatever, baseball. I don't know. Um, in basketball, because both were such a pull to him. And then both of us were really involved in music in our churches. I was in a band for a while. Just all those nerdy pursuits that we all have. Big party thrower. I love throwing a party. So yeah, you find your social group, you find what suits you and fits you, and just like you would anytime. But honestly, I feel like with homeschooling, you have more time to fit it in.
Mhm, mhm.
So, yeah.
Yes, it sounds like a lot of different types of options.
Oh
So
yeah,
being that you work in the school
I
themselves,
do.
right?
Irony, yes.
Yes, it is irony. Talk to us about that irony. What are some
Oh
major
yeah,
differences
absolutely.
you see?
Happily. So there's a lot of differences. I think that everywhere I go, moms wonder if they're doing the best for their child. Everywhere I go. Every mom has that question. Every parent wonders, if is there more I could do? Is there a better option for my child? And I think that happens in both. Um, I do think that the one of the nice things about being in the homeschool world is I have such a great connection to my children's education. I know exactly what they're working on. That's
Right.
so awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't have to ask them, hey, what did you do in school today? Because I can look at the board and go, hey, Vikings, talk to me about Vikings. I don't have to
Right.
wonder if they're going to bring their homework home so I can ask them about it. It's just there. And when I get home, there's a chunk of school that we do, but once we're done, we're just done. It's not homework for 5 hours, which is
Right.
great. Another benefit of doing homeschooling year round. But then at the public school, I see we have an amazing special education team in my district. Like it's insane. I've worked in 6 different districts. This is by far like I'm torn between if it's top 1 or top 2, and I think it's only top 2 right now, just because it's only been together for as long as it has been. We need some more time to gel. But it's a really, really good group of people, and there's just so much accommodating. There's so much really digging in and supporting the students in beautiful ways. And I love that about a public school and how they do that. But yeah, it's irony. The other day, a teacher, we were at an in-service and she was talking about a family member who was homeschooling. She's like, oh my goodness, they homeschool. And I was like, oh, I was homeschooled. What are they doing? And she was like,
Right.
oh, I did not know that
Right.
about you. You're pretty like social for homeschooling. And I was like, well, thank you. I was awkward before I homeschooled. So like, yeah. I appreciate that. I appreciate that so much. But I think people are becoming more and more open and realizing that, you know, public school teachers are not the bad guy. Public school parents are not the bad guy. Homeschool parents are not the bad guy. Um, we do need sometimes different options. Not every mom has the luxury of staying home and teaching her kids, obviously.
Right.
Sometimes there's different situations, and we all do what we need to do with our family. I do, however, really support parents being highly involved in their local school, because a local school district, when it's got great teachers, it is a powerful thing, and it does not need anybody with a suit messing it up. So, yeah.
Let me ask you this. Have you seen any children in public school enter from homes being homeschooled and enter into school, or vice versa? Have they
Oh
been
yeah.
okay? Talk to us about that. I think, and tell me what you think. I think we're going to be seeing more and more
Yes.
of that.
Yep. I would agree. I think you've got your finger on the pulse there, because honestly, there's everybody's searching for something different. I mean, think about it. We got the great resignation going on. This is like the children version of that. We have families that are looking for something different. I also think that I'm a bit crunchy, so just hearing what I've heard from the crunchy community, the natural medicine mindful community, I think that there are going to be some people who don't feel comfortable saying that they have a religious exemption to certain vaccines being added to the schedule. But if those vaccines are added to the schedule, they might not want to send their kids to school.
Mhm.
And so we might have some more pullout because of that. That is a possibility from what I can tell, just
Right.
watching on both ends. I'd have to say transitioning is not as hard as people would think. back and forth. I think you have to weed out there's outliers. So one of the things that can give homeschoolers a bad name in public schools is, and I've had these sad stories. I don't know what the rating is for your podcast, so I'll be very gentle. But I've had I've had students taken home from public school to homeschool, but it wasn't to homeschool. It was so that their parents could use them in ways that no child should ever be used uh, for compensation. I've seen that more times than I
Have
wish
you
I could
really? You've
count.
seen that?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so
Oh yeah.
unfortunate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've worked in some really rough places.
Yeah,
So I've seen that. And that's never been fun when it's uncovered. It's especially tragic when you see the evidence of it and it's reported and still nothing is done. So that gives public school teachers a bad taste in their mouth for homeschooling.
sure.
So if a homeschool parent is sitting there thinking, "Oh man, public schoolers, they just don't like us." Sometimes that's why. It's because they know a baby where that's what happened to them.
Right.
Or they know a baby where the parents said they were homeschooling, they did absolutely nothing with them. And then, in return, I'd hope that there was a greater understanding the other way around, because sometimes families need to change based on what they need. And in my experience, the families who truly homeschool, like really truly homeschool, they don't usually send their kids back to public school.
Mhm.
But when they do, they usually do pretty well. I had a good friend. She wanted to go to school. She begged and begged and begged her mom. She got to junior year, um, and she had been homeschooled the entire time. Her mom was like, "Fine, fine, just go." Within about 3 months, she was like, "Can I come back to homeschooling? I had so
Wow.
much more social life before. This is
Wow.
really cramping my style." And that was literally what it was. She did not love the demand on her time because suddenly she was doing so much homework that she wasn't able to hang out with friends. And I was
Yes.
like, "Of course." Of course. But then I've seen public school go homeschool, and there's a transition period. Look up deschooling if you are thinking about moving to homeschooling. Look up deschooling, because I think there's a point to this. Having a mental break. With me and my husband, we started from scratch homeschooling, and we had that experience already. You're going to spend a lot of your time feeling like you have to be somebody
Mm.
spectacular in order to homeschool. But you got to give yourself grace. You got to give yourself some time, and you got to realize that you don't have to fill 7.5 hours a day. Or actually, if we're being honest, I think our school district does 6 or 6.25 hours of actual instructional time a day. You don't have to fill that. I'd say the average homeschooler I meet is 4 hours.
Mhm.
4 hours. So but yeah, I think the transition requires time, but it can be done, and I think it can go both ways well. But I have to admit that most of the time when I see somebody homeschooling well, they don't usually go back.
Right. So far we've talked about the benefits, there's some variations,
Hmm.
including cooperatives. We talked
Yep.
about that mom factor that can impact the child's perception of their mom as their
Yes.
now teacher. Is there anything else that you would either advise or share with our listeners that we have not covered?
About homeschooling,
Mm.
I'd say find a community. Um, Even if you want to do secular homeschooling, go ahead and get connected to your state organization, because usually the state organization is religious based, but just connect with them because they'll keep you updated on what's going on in your state. Like big issues, like they might change the rules all of a sudden. You'd want to know that to make sure you're being legal, because every single state is different. I'd
Right.
recommend you connecting with HSLDA, so the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. They have information on every single state, and their website is so smooth. It is so easy to use because you type in your state and it tells you exactly what has to be done in your state to be legal. And if you are following the rules and somebody comes to you and says, "Oh my goodness, what are you doing homeschooling?" and they get like your district superintendent involved or something like that, the HSLDA will defend you for free,
Great.
which
Good
is
to know.
great.
Yes,
Yeah.
really good to know.
So they're a wonderful resource, but get in touch with your state people, even if you want to do secular homeschooling. There's great Facebook groups. There's so much free curriculum out there. I just heard about a new one. A family was just pulled actually from the school that I work in, and they're homeschooling all of their kids now. I was like, whew, that's going to be a lot of curriculum. And the
Right?
mom was like, well, we're going to use Easy Peasy and it's free. And I was like, fantastic. What is that? I need to look it up right now.
Yes.
So yeah,
Fantastic.
but
Thank you for that advice and those
yeah, great
resources.
stuff.
Where can people find you, and for exactly what can they find you for?
Oh, good question. I love this one especially because I could talk about it forever, but I won't. So, um, you can find me at www.illuminatecommunicate.com. So illuminate, like bringing light, communicate as in that thing that connects us and brings us relationships together. Illuminatecommunicate.com. And you can find me there. I'm a speech language pathologist. I teach children that have a lot of frustration and anxiety about communication, especially late talkers, how to talk with confidence. And then I also work in the homeschool community, helping homeschool students fix their sounds. I love doing that. I offer classes and courses and private speech therapy in the state of Indiana, soon to spread in 2023. And it's great. It's great. Parent support group that's free, podcast that's free, lots of freebies. My favorite free download to suggest, and I'll end with this, is the Homeschool Parents Guide to Speech Therapy 50 State Starter Kit. Because with that, you can get all the contact information for if you need to go through your state agency, if you want to go through your local district, if you want to DIY, or if you want to connect to somebody who's homeschool friendly in your state.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your knowledge with us. We really appreciate your time. And for those of you who are listening, thank you for spending your time with us. Be sure to leave some comments, like, share, and subscribe. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Student Success Beyond Expectations podcast, where school leaders, educators, and parents meet on behalf of children who struggle with learning.